Dobro. History. Archive.
Okay, so picture this. Seoul, October 1988. The city is absolutely glowing. The Summer Olympics just wrapped up and it was a huge success. This was the miracle on the Han, on full display for the entire world. A picture of prosperity, of progress. But then, just 2 weeks after all the athletes went home, one single desperate event ripped that perfect image to shreds. All right, let's get into it. Mujan Ujwai. These were the last words of Ji Gang-heon, a prison escapee, screamed out on live national television as police were closing in. And that phrase, man, it just burned itself into the nation's memory. It became this powerful gut punch of an idiom for injustice that people in Korea still use to this day. So you have to ask, right? Why these words? This wasn't just the rambling of some cornered criminal. No, this was a diagnosis of a sickness deep inside his society. To really understand why he chose that phrase as his last, we need to take a hard look at the world he was so desperately trying to escape. To really get to the bottom of Jin's scream, we first have to peel back the shiny layers of 1988 Seoul. Because it wasn't one city. It was a tale of two cities, two completely different realities existing right on top of each other. I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. On one hand, you've got the miracle, this global prestige, a booming economy, a real success story. But hiding right behind that glittering facade was a brutal, ugly reality. The government launched what it called a beautification program, but what it really was a violent campaign of social cleansing to hide the city's poor people from the world's TV cameras. And look, this wasn't some minor project. This number, 3,000, that's just for one single district. Thousands of families were violently torn from their homes, their houses demolished by thugs hired by construction companies, all to make sure the Olympic torch route looked picture perfect. Ji Gang-heon and the other escapees, they were from this forgotten class, people the state treated like dirt to be swept under the rug. So you had people being physically pushed aside, and that was mirrored by what was happening in the legal system. The system that was hunting Ji basically operated on two completely different sets of rules, one for the rich and one for the poor. And that combination, it was the fuel and the spark for the whole tragedy. First, the fuel, the Social Protection Act. Now, just wrap your head around how insane this is. You serve your time, your entire sentence. You've paid your debt. But then an administrative committee, not a judge, not a jury, could just decide you're a risk and lock you up for another 7 to 10 years. It was basically a system of endless prison for the poor, a life sentence on an installment plan. And if that law was the fuel, this right here was the match that lit the whole thing on fire. While Ji was staring down 17 years for stealing about $5,000, the president's own brother, Chun Kyung-hwan, got caught embezzling over $60 million. Just look at the sentences. Ji gets 17 years, Chun gets 7. I mean, this right here is the living, breathing definition of Ji's final words. Let's just visualize this for a second. This chart lays it all out. Ji was looking at nearly 2 decades of his life just gone. Meanwhile, Chun Kyung-hwan, the guy who stole 10,000 times more money, ends up serving only about 3 years before he gets a pardon. The law wasn't a shield for people like Ji. It was a weapon used against them. Okay, so now that you have all that context, let's go back to the escape. Because what happened over those 8 days, it wasn't just a manhunt for some bad guys. It was the last desperate roar from men who were pushed way past their breaking point by a system that was built to crush them. So it all kicks off on October 8th. 12 inmates break out of a prison bus. And as the manhunt stretched on for a week, something really strange started to happen. The public, who were being told these guys were monsters, actually started to sympathize with them. Hostages later said the fugitives were polite, that they kept apologizing, that they explained the injustice of the Social Protection Act. They weren't monsters, they were just desperate men. By October 16th, there were only 4 left. They were cornered in a house, surrounded by over 1,000 police officers. The entire nation was glued to their TVs, watching it all unfold live. And in this incredibly tense, surreal moment, Ji Gang-heon makes one last request. He wants to hear a song, Holiday by the Bee Gees. And the lyrics, I mean, they're just heartbreakingly perfect. If the puppet makes you smile, if not, then you're throwing stones. Jingyu literally saw himself as a puppet in a game that was rigged from the start. His whole life had been pulled and pushed by forces he couldn't control. And now, since he failed to make the powerful smile, he was facing the stones of the state. So, with that song playing, Ji held a shard of glass to his own throat, screamed his final words, and the siege came to a violent end. The man himself was gone. But his message? Oh, his message was just getting started. The echo of that scream would force the entire country to take a hard look in the mirror. The public outrage was immediate and it was massive. What everyone saw on TV that day sparked this huge, fierce debate about inequality and the justice system that the government just couldn't ignore anymore. Now, it took way too long, but Jimmy's public sacrifice had a direct result. In 2005, after 17 years of activists pushing, that unjust Social Protection Act was finally, officially abolished. A victory, yes, but one that came at a terrible price. But here's the bitter truth that lingered. Just look at what happened to the key players. Ji Gang-heon, dead. Chun Kyung-hwan, the guy who embezzled millions, pardoned after just a few years, lived a comfortable life. Even his brother, the former dictator Chun Do-hwan, was eventually pardoned after receiving a death sentence. This is the ultimate tragic proof of everything Ji screamed about. And the power of this story just doesn't fade. The imagery from that day, the shard of glass, the absolute desperation, the fight against a system rigged for the rich, you can see its DNA all over modern Korean culture, from movies that tell his story directly to global smash hits like Squid Game. The themes of class warfare and a rigged society that Ji screamed about are just as powerful today as they were in 1988. Which brings us to one last, pretty unsettling question. Ji Gang-heon's story happened in a specific time and place, sure. But that scream feels universal, doesn't it? It forces all of us to look at our own societies right now and ask ourselves, have we really moved past this? Or does the kind of justice you get still depend on how much money is in your bank account?